Okay, I'm going to try and keep this very brief and talk about why we're here today. It's about the prime agricultural soils. You look all around, Lancaster County has the best, most productive agricultural soils, not just in the United States, but in the world. Lancaster County's extensive and highly productive soils are widely considered to support some of the best non-irrigated farmland in the world. This is a valuable, finite, and irreplaceable resource. These prime agricultural soils and favorable weather conditions are what has enabled Lancaster County to be the #1 non-irrigated agricultural county in the country. Now, first the good news. There's good and bad to the story. The good news is, for the last 25 years, we've had a very strong farmland preservation program. A total of 106,000 acres of farmland have been preserved. And a lot of credit goes to organizations such as Lancaster Farmland Trust, the Ag Preserve Board, and many other individuals who have supported that effort. We are also #1 in the acres of preserved farmland, #1 county in the United States. Here's the bad news. From 1950 through 2015, Lancaster County has lost 25% of their agricultural land base. That equates to 125,000 acres of fertile, productive soil that has been paved over and lost forever. The county continues to, and I got these numbers from the Ag Preserve Board, Lancaster County Planning Commission. As of this year, the county is continuing to lose 1,100 acres of farmland per year to development. That is not sustainable. We've heard a lot about the Coalition for Smart Growth, and they would look at those figures and they would praise those statistics. They would say, well, 10, 15, 20 years ago, we were losing 3,000 acres a year. Now we're only losing 1,100 acres. When you consider the demand for global food production, losing even 10 more acres of productive farmland, it's unacceptable. We need to figure out how to support growth without the continual outward expansion of the built environment into this beautiful countryside. Class 1 and Class 2 prime soils need to be protected from development because their highest and best use is for food production, not for growing housing subdivisions, industrial parks, and more strip malls. At a time when growth pressures are increasing, the farmland preservation funding has fallen precipitously short. And I'll give you some statistics there. If you go back just 3 years ago, the funding for farmland preservation is down 50% from what it was just 3 years ago. If you go back to the period 2000 to 2009, the funding is down 78%. At a time when development pressures are increasing, we should be doing just the opposite and providing more funding for farmland preservation. Currently, there are 189 farms on the preservation waiting list. These are farmers that have a very strong stewardship ethic. They want to preserve their land, but there's no county funds to do that. So they're on a waiting list. At the current rate of funding, that waiting list will result in a 5 to 7 year wait. So you can see the scenario, the farmer's waiting for 7 years, a developer comes in, offers them a couple $1 million. What's the farmer to do? Sell out for development or wait for preservation? So that issue needs to be addressed to get the program back on track. Not to be over political, but I'm going to state a fact here that Greg Paulson's opponent, Scott Martin, he served as Lancaster County Commissioner for 8 years. He had opportunity to find a viable funding alternative to support the farmland preservation program, and he failed to do that. So we basically lost 8 years at the county level, and there's still no answers as to how we're going to fund the program. Current planning efforts and the county's rural strategy, which Lois Herr, former chair of the Lancaster County Planning Commission, is going to speak to that issue. Those programs have been woefully inadequate in protecting the environment, the culture, and our farming communities, which make Lancaster County the special place that it is today. Elected county officials and the Lancaster County Planning Commission have really lost sight of the reason for planning, and we should be planning to preserve our rural and cultural heritage, and that is falling short. So-called smart growth initiatives are only contributing to the problem of development encroachment into rural areas. And as Marty pointed out, you look right over the horizon, imagine a massive development of almost 600 homes, commercial, retail, going in, and I'm sure everyone here can agree, this is not an urban area. This is a rural farming area that is inappropriate for that scale and intensity of development. The Coalition for Smart Growth continues to embrace a policy that calls for the continual outward expansion of the built environment into the countryside. Now, it doesn't take a lot of imagination going back to that 1,100 acres a year that we're losing. If we continue that outward expansion ad infinitum, eventually there's no countryside. It's all paved over. These policies of the continual outward expansion and aggressively supporting growth. Now, we're not against growth. No one's against growth here, but it's the aggressive support of growth that at some point there needs to be a balance. And it seems like things have gotten out of balance between growth versus preservation. So if you look forward 40 years from now, and you ask the question, what will the county look like 40 years from now? If we continue on this path, yes, we've preserved 106,000 acres of farmland, but we will end up with a network of farm preserves spread out over a largely urbanized landscape. And that kind of a scenario, it's doubtful whether agriculture, as we know it today, can even thrive in that type of an urbanized environment. One of the worst examples of this so-called smart growth is the Oregon Dairy Development Plan. It's being billed as smart growth, high density. High density is a great way to conserve land, but it's the location where you put that high density. And high density is not compatible put up right against the preserve farm and impacts farming operations. You look at the Route 272 corridor today. You drive your car from the West Earl Township line at the Cacalico Creek. You head south all the way to Landis Valley Farm Museum. That corridor is still a predominantly agricultural corridor, unspoiled by intensive commercial development. What is being proposed with the Oregon Dairy Development would change the whole character of the corridor and would put this high-density development smack down in the middle of Manham Township's last remaining agricultural zone. And we're sitting and standing in that agricultural zone here. There are plenty of places throughout the county where investment development is needed. This site right over the hill here is certainly not one of them. This is a place where agriculture can still thrive and be viable, and that's what we should be supporting. Agricultural preservation in this location of the county must take precedent over development. And next speaker will be Lois Herr.